everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I am your host, Chris Stashew, and I am joined by my good friend, award-winning screenwriter. However, we're not in the same room this time, Mrs. Jess Byard.
Hello.
Hi there. So it's been an evening. It's been a week. All sorts of fun things have been going on in the last week and a half since I got back from Akron. So, you know, it's not been dull, let's put it that way. Been dealing with some redneck neighbors and some, your plant just got fucking murdered.
Axed.
Axed
my
by the...
My plant just got destroyed by my cat, who, not because, she was eating it, purely because she's a fat ass and clumsy and fell into my plant, therefore snapping it in half directly at the base of the stem. So there is no hope. Dario is dead. Plants give no fucks about human wants or needs. So, and that's the way cats are. So fuck you. Your plant's broken now. Oh, God. But we are going to be not rounding out Horrortober because there is one more podcast before Horrortober ends. And that is going to be the podcast that Jess and I recorded in person. It is the Halloween Town Halloween special.
Spectacular 3.5 hours of us talking about Halloween Town and Hocus Pocus and Halloween and Haunted House, everything in between. It's 3.5 hours with the John Cooksey interview. It'll probably be closer to 4.5 hours. So you can make sure to keep an eye out for that one on Thursday, October 31st. That is Halloween. However, this is coming out before that, so we're going to talk about something else. We are going to be talking about ginger snaps. So ginger snaps are a kind of cookie. They are... wow, you're just going to no-sell that?
Podcast.
You're just going to no-sell that. That's fine. No, we're not talking... You know what? Fine.
I like ginger snaps, the cookie.
So do I. However, we are not going to be talking about the cookies as much as I would like to. We are going to be talking about ginger snaps from 2000.
So, Fitz, I think we should get together.
No. Out by 16 or dead in the scene, but together forever.
United against life as we know it. Let's get out of here.
What was it?
A big dog, maybe?
Whoa. Whoa? That's it? Whoa?
Think you see werewolves a lot?
Did I change last night? Howl at the moon?
How do you feel?
Wicked. This is a very confusing time for your sister. Boys, their body, trying to fit in.
Hey, take it easy. Who's the guy?
I think she's pretty. If I wasn't here, would you eat her?
Poor Bee. I'm growing up, and obviously you're not.
Oh my God.
You think I want to go back to being nobody? You're so dead. They're just being normal teenage girls.
I'm not dying in this room with you! I'm not dying!
I think she's gone.
You know, we're almost not even related anymore.
A horror movie that, like I mentioned on the last podcast, where I was joined by Richard Haddam, this movie is a film that, how do I put it this way? It's not exactly a film that a lot of men can relate to.
No, probably not.
No, probably not.
I mean, it's it's a movie about puberty.
Right. It's a movie about puberty, but it's
Specifically female puberty.
Exactly. So the film is directed by John Fawcett. It is written by Karen Walton and John Fawcett. It stars Emily Perkins. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, I guarantee you she is familiar to you if you have seen the original It, which I think at this point everyone has. It also stars Katherine Isabelle, who I guess the only thing I remember her from is Hannibal, though I know she was in American Mary, that Soska Sisters film. I don't like the Soska Sisters at all.
I like, they're hit or miss for me. I do like American Mary, and I like Katherine Isabelle and everything because, well, it's Katherine Isabelle.
Oh, there you go.
There's not a lot to not like there.
Oh, wow. Kind of like Ava Green, right? Not a whole lot to not like.
She was also in Freddy vs. Jason.
Was she?
Yeah, she's the, like, PJ Souls reference, where she's wearing the hat and her boyfriend gets snapped in half by Jason and then she dies in the cornfield later.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay, I don't really, like, I have not seen Freddy vs. Jason in so long.
I've seen that movie quite a few times.
Well, there you go. So this movie follows two sisters who are obsessed with death. One of them gets bitten by a werewolf. And the other one, Katherine Isabelle, is the one who gets bitten by a werewolf, and the other one, Emily Perkins' character, has to deal with her sister becoming a werewolf, but maybe just going through puberty until she totally just becomes a fucking werewolf.
Yeah.
So
there's not a lot of mystery there.
No, there's not a lot of mystery. We'll get to that though. Jess, I know you've seen this film before. This was one of your suggestions. What are your thoughts coming back and watching the film again? I don't know the last time you watched it, but what did you think the first time you watched it, and what do you think rewatching it now?
So I think I probably saw this. I've only had seen this movie once before, and I think I saw it probably somewhere between 2002 and 2004, so 12 to 14. And at the time, I didn't remember really caring for this movie all that much, or even really remembering much about it to begin with. Revisiting it, I actually ended up really liking this movie a lot more than I thought I would. However, I do think it goes on way too long. But overall, I was actually pretty, I don't know, I was pretty pleased to come back to this and see and have like a newfound appreciation for it. Because like I said, I remember not being that big of a fan of it. And now coming back to it, I like these two characters, you know, they're both sides of the same coin, you know, there's the sides of you haven't hit puberty yet, but you're starting to with Emily Perkins' character, the younger sister who's not as attractive, you know, she's supposed to be much more like to herself. They're both weird sisters to begin with. They both are obsessed with death and macabre stuff, and that's interesting. And I think I probably latched onto that when I was a kid too, just because I liked all the creepy stuff. Not to the extent of them where they're recreating like horrific scenes of death to take for, I guess, a badass fucking class project.
Right, because that's not real.
I would have totally, well, hey, like I said, what we picked this year 2000 because it's such a strange pre 9/11 time. Post 9/11, no way would anybody be getting away with that fucking project that they did. Sure, they get sent to the guidance counselor's office at the beginning of this movie, but that's it. I don't even think they get detention or anything. Post 9/11, holy shit, they would be like screened. They'd have to be in special classes. It would be a whole thing. Like they'd be in at least after school suspension for a week. But it's nice to like, I mean, this movie's super Canadian, obviously. And
oh, really? Oh,
sorry.
really? Sorry, eh?
Well, I mean, it's Katherine Isabelle, and she is Canadian, if I am not mistaken, and she at least very much appears in a lot of Canadian movies, Soska Sisters included. And I like both of these characters in this movie. Yeah, Katherine Isabelle's character sort of, at the beginning, there are these sisters that get along really well. They join, you know, they unite in their creepiness. And then once Katherine Isabelle gets her period, which they both are mentioned to be late bloomers in that department. Once she gets that, she sort of like distances herself from her younger sister And you begin to get that dynamic of, siblings that just clash in every way. I, being an only child, don't really have that much experience personally. However, I did have friends who were sisters and were that age, like that same sort of like age difference. And I did see that where it was like they would be fucking best friends one moment and then just ripping each other's hair out the next moment. So I think that both of these characters are very well represented, and I think that it is a very relatable slice of life packed into a dark horror comedy shell. But again, an hour and 48 minutes is way too long. I could have cut it at like an hour and 25, 30. That'd be great.
I would agree with you about the length of the movie, and it's one of the, I'm not going to say many problems I have with this movie, because I don't, this is going to sound terrible, but I don't really have an opinion on this movie. It's just okay.
I mean, that's fair.
It's not like, I don't know, like for me, it's like the first half of the movie is pretty good, and then like once you get the werewolf animatronic, which looks awful, it is straight up like a haunted house bad. Once you get to that part of the film, the climax that takes what feels like a half an hour. I mean, the whole scene between Bridget and Ginger when she's in the in werewolf form, it's very like reminiscent of The Fly, but The Fly did it better because The Fly knew when to just pull the trigger on the disgusting shit and just go full bore and just be done with the movie. Because it's you don't need to have a 30-minute payoff. You need like a 10, 15-minute payoff, if that.
Yeah, this werewolf lore is a bit different. Like, these rules are a bit different than what you would normally be used to with werewolf. Like, it's not that she turns into a werewolf exclusively, like, during the full moon or during her cycle or whatever. It's kind of like she's turning into a wolf creature.
And then that's
stuck. What she's going to be. Yeah, it's not like you're a man, like you're only a werewolf during a certain time. It's like you're slowly, like The Fly, you're beginning this transition. So she starts to grow like a tail and all of this stuff. And so it's not traditional werewolfism in that aspect. I kind of dig this version of it, though. Like, that's, like, a much more monstrous, I think, sort of process. And I'm sure, obviously, like, this movie is a parallel to puberty and her getting her period at the same time as it's happening. So, again, that makes sense as to why it's a spaced-out process, because we're getting, like, the beginnings of puberty, and you hit one step at a time. And that's translated into her, turning into this wolf creature. Except for that, there's also just a regular werewolf around, I guess, which is destroyed at the beginning of the movie.
Until it gets wrecked by a car, which is quite possibly my favorite part of the entire movie.
Oh, it totally just gets smashed by the local, 22-year-old stoner who's hanging out by the high school all the time for some reason. Like, how old is this kid supposed to be? He's just like their local drug dealer. He's growing. He's got a greenhouse of weed. He's at one point weighing bags of weed. So he's like a real-time dealer, not just, hey, I have some weed, would you like to buy
But he doesn't
some?
like it when the kids smoke it in the back of his car.
Right. Well, I mean, hey, it's his fucking car. Get the hell out of my car. I'd be pissed off, too. If it was, the asshole, dick teens of the school, no thanks. Get the hell out of my car. But again, how old is this guy? He's clearly into Bridget, Emily Perkins' younger sister character. And she's 15 is what I think Ginger says.
Katherine Isabelle says, oh, by the way, what are you trying to, fucking statutory rape my sister?
Yeah, because this guy's got to be at the very least, 19. Because he's not in high school anymore. He just is there. Because you see him, drive there and drive away in the middle of the day, when they're playing lacrosse. Which also, that's a big Canadian thing. What fucking American high school would have?
Hey, it's called field hockey, eh?
Be showcasing women's field hockey. Which that would have been awesome if we had that in high school. I would have totally been all about women's field hockey.
Not just 1 or 2 scenes, 3 or 4 scenes.
Well, yeah, because you got to get Katherine Isabelle beating the shit out of that lady. And honestly, with this movie is basically Carrie with werewolves, right?
I would say pretty close, yeah.
It's not quite, Bridget and Ginger aren't bullied to the extent that Carrie White is bullied by Chris Hargensen and all of her friends. But it's pretty much the same dynamic, and where you have like the two sisters who are kind of weird. Except in this case, Katherine Isabelle is supposed to be the hot sister, and she is, so she's not, like, totally reviled by the whole school. It's more of a jealousy thing between her and, like, the queen bee on the field hockey team. But, yeah, you have several scenes of that going, back and forth, which, I guess I found it I found it funny. I like to watch, bullies get their comeuppance, so it's fine to watch Katherine Isabelle beat the shit out of that girl. But overall, I don't think that this is a movie that many men are going to relate to, both now and, but of any age.
Frankly,
really.
I think frankly ever.
Yeah, and it's really because it is very specific to female puberty. And yes, we all go through puberty, but it's different for men and women. But I think that this movie, along with Carrie, are probably like the best two examples. Jennifer's Body is actually a pretty good example of it too. Putting those female characters at the forefront, going, hey, this is what it's like. It's not just, all American Pie and all this stuff where, everybody's just getting, sticking their dick in everything. It's different when it's coming from this perspective. And I think that even though this movie was, directed by a man, right?
Yeah, John Fawcett.
It still has, I think, a pretty good female perspective. It's not purely a movie with women in it. It's a movie that's actually about women, and I think that comes across pretty well. I think that he manages to sort of speak to that audience pretty well. The rules of of werewolfism, like how you spread it, are kind of interesting because you can spread it like an STD.
Well, and that goes farther into the puberty allegory for the film,
right? Which
I felt like that was a little much, like because it seems to go and muddy the rules of the film.
A little bit, yeah. We don't really ever know where the first werewolf comes from.
And like we've talked about before on other podcasts that you and I have been on together, horror really kind of lives and dies by its rules, and living and, playing by the rules and not breaking them.
I think... You know what I wanted in this movie? So there's a part, we haven't really touched on Mimi Rogers' character, who is their mother.
Which is the weirdest character in the film.
Yeah, so it's their mother, and you really don't see her until, she becomes an actual character in the movie probably at the midway point, once Ginger starts to,
Snap,
yes. Once Ginger starts to snap, then you get Mimi Rogers, who is this kind of just overbearing, very nice, very stereotypical mom. And I thought with the direction, because I couldn't remember, like I said, I'd only seen the movie once before. I couldn't remember if Mimi Rogers was maybe a werewolf, and that they had history with that, and she knew kind of what Ginger was going through, because later on in the movie when they accidentally kill the bully, and it's one of those fall and smash your head into something, and it's a pretty good hit.
It's also a very total accident.
Oh yeah, it's 100% an accident. Yes, Katherine Isabelle is getting a little murdery at this point because she's totally starting to wolf out, but it's purely as she slips and falls backward and smashes her head into a counter. It's a good, solid hit. It made me wince. But after this happens, they decide to hide the body and accidentally break off some fingers after they hide them in the meat freezer. Later on, Mimi Rogers finds these fingers and then immediately decides, okay, I have to save my children at all costs, and that means if they murdered somebody, then I need to cover it up. Which would be, she was totally willing to burn down the house with her husband in it.
Well, she was willing to cover up murders with a murder with more murder.
Yes. And so I thought at that point, I'm like, oh, is she aware? Is she the original werewolf? Are we did she turn to the other one that got wrecked by the car? No, none of that ever happens. I think that was a slightly missed opportunity, because I think that it still could have fit in really well with the female allegories and everything in it. And I think it would have made some things make a little more sense, or at least make it feel a little more cohesive. And why Mimi Rogers just all of a sudden decides that she's totally on board with murder and covering up murder, like you said, with more murder.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that takes place in the later parts, the later acts of the film, that I genuinely do not understand. Mimi Rogers' character being one of them, it's like all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, and, you know, I mean, I get the whole protect your family angle, but like, why are you willing to kill your husband?
Right. Like, he's just, and I mean, he's pretty much a non-entity the whole movie. He's just like the hapless, like, I don't know what's going on, but you guys are, you know, better stay out of trouble. It's just sort of dad. He's not really there. And so what it feels like to me is it feels like they had like a couple different directions they wanted to go in with the ending, and then they just put them all in there. I feel like they wanted to do something more with Mimi Rogers' character, and they just never like bring it to fruition. And then on the other hand, you still have like, is Ginger going to be fine? Like, is there any way out of this? Is she going to be fine? Are they going to be able to live in peace after this? In which case, obviously not, except there is a sequel, which she's in.
Two sequels.
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't seen either of them.
Well, and I feel like the climax of this film does such a poor job of making me want to watch the further adventures of any of these characters.
Yeah.
Because the final act of this movie, it devolves from a interesting premise with an interesting execution into a very generic film. Like, it becomes very generic by the end of the film. Yes,
I would agree. They just start hitting, because it feels very much like they realize, oh shit, we're going on too long with this ending. We need to start wrapping it up, because they are at one sequence. It feels like the ending is in two parts, because the first half of it happens at the high school, where they're just like running around and basically terrorizing the janitor and other people that are just happen to be in the high school. And then we move on to getting back to their house. And it's like, I could have done with either one or the other, or you could have just severely cut down on how long you decided to go back to the high school.
Yeah, it's such a weird way to end the film, because like you said, it's just, the film's ending is a pretty good just condensation of the entire film, because the ending goes on for too long and it seems rather muddled, and the ending is the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't even understand, like, does the cure work?
I mean, I don't know.
Because does Jason turn into a werewolf? He turns into a werewolf, but then he unturns into a werewolf?
Yeah, and I also was like, why did you waste all the antidote on him? Because she just, like, totally, like, they go through that whole little ritual, her and the drug dealer guy go through that whole ritual, and they do this whole thing, you know, put it in the syringe and make sure you don't, you know, accidentally kill, you know, you could possibly kill her if you inject all of this into her and whatever. And then, yeah, the first person she runs into is Jason, the bully's boyfriend that Katherine Isabelle steals, essentially, and then infects with werewolfism. She just, like, straight injects him, like, right in the neck with all of it. He doesn't die, but now she's out of the antidote, and I guess the cure worked, because he runs away and it's like, I gotta go to class now, and we never hear from him again.
Yeah.
Like, why did you even go through that whole situation if you were just going to waste the cure immediately? And it's not like I feel like maybe that scene, I haven't read the script, was written in a way that forced her to sort of inject him. Like, maybe he was supposed to attack her or something like that, and she has no choice but to waste the antidote on him. But that's not how it plays out in the movie. She literally just runs into him and is like, hey, stop attacking this girl. And then injects him with the cure. She could have, like, subdued him or distracted him or whatever. Or not even injected the whole thing. Like, you could have done half. It was a full syringe.
Yeah, I don't understand a lot of the climax of this movie, which is why I have a hard time, like, getting on board with this movie. Because I like so much of the first half, with kind of, like, the body horror and Katherine Isabelle turning into a werewolf, and you get to see these parts of her, like, she grows a tail, she's growing hair, you know.
Her, like, white streaks in her hair and all that.
Yeah, like, all this, like, really interesting stuff, and then it just goes at the end, nah, this is just a werewolf movie. Like,
here's just a grab bag of stuff.
Yeah, like, you've seen this before. This is nothing new. Isn't this exciting that you're seeing the exact same movie you've seen a million times before?
It's the same ending as American Horror, or American Werewolf in London, where it's like only a person, you recognize the person that you love, even in your wolf form, but can't help but,
But they're not that person anymore.
Yeah.
They need to get murdered.
I guess. But she comes back in the next one, so I guess
she doesn't. No, she's dead. She is in hallucinations in the next one.
Oh.
Well, she's dead. She dies. Okay. She is straight up murdered by her sister. So,
right.
But it's like, even then, like, I feel for the character of Bridget, where she's, like, conflicted about killing her own sister. But, yeah, like, it does come back to this very rote, tropey ending of, oh, she's not your sister anymore. I'm surprised they didn't say that line, like, she's not your sister in there anymore, like they always do in, like, zombie movies.
Right, well, I mean, Katherine Isabelle has the, like, I don't even know who you are anymore line.
Right, which is different from...
Oh, we're not even related anymore line is what she says.
Right, which is different from the, like, that's not your sister anymore type nonsense. So I applauded for doing that, but at the same time, it is just so very straightforward at the end of the film. But, like, straightforward, but at the same time... It just feels like they didn't know what to do. Right, it feels like they're just spinning their wheels. Like, okay, and there's a party scene. Okay, and Bridget's love interest has to die. And for some reason, Bridget gets infected with werewolfism?
Yeah.
Again, that's one of the biggest problems I have with the film. Is they don't give me I don't feel like there's a legitimate reason or motivation for her character to inject herself with Ginger's werewolf blood, let alone start trying to, like, the scene where she's like...
Where they cut their hands and...
No, where she's licking up her, like, the drug dealer boyfriend guy's blood. Yeah. It's just, like, so fucking gross. And it's like, okay, like, and for me, like, shit doesn't gross me out, but just, like, that was just fucking gross for some reason. I was watching it, and, like, the way it was shot, it's shot in, like, orange light, and Emily Perkins is, like, sitting there, like, spooning it into her mouth. It's fucking nasty.
Yeah, it is pretty gross.
It is not this, like, there are parts of this movie that I wouldn't say are not for the faint of heart, but are not for the easily upset.
Yeah, if you have a blood problem, there's going to be a few scenes in this where you probably want to look away. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess it was like a last-ditch effort of, like, like, I'm still your sister and I want to still be your sister. We're the same, we're still close. But I don't know. Like, I guess in the second movie is when Bridget just, comes to terms with her werewolfism. Because does she actually, like I said, I don't know. I haven't seen this.
Yes, part of the second film is her coming to terms with her werewolfism, but also trying to cure her werewolfism.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess that cure didn't work.
Well, of course, that's the way it goes. That's the way that's the problem with these werewolf stories, is so much of these werewolf stories are about how do we fix what's happened.
No,
like, I think it would have... Exactly. That's the story I would write, is, like, embrace...
Well, hey, Katherine Isabelle does. And for a while, it's awesome.
Right, but what I would contend is it would have been a better film if we had just followed her. No sister, just Katherine Isabelle's character.
Yeah, I could see that.
And you have her just going apeshit on all the bullies at school. So pretty much just Carrie with a werewolf, which, you know what? I actually liked Carrie. So if this would have just been... Carrie. If this had just been Carrie with a werewolf, I think I would have been more on board. But it's like you add Emily Perkins in, and you add, like, because her character is driving the whole "Can I save my sister?" B plot of the film, and, like, that is the part of the film that does not land for me. So in my mind, if there was not a sister character to Katherine Isabelle's Ginger, that would remove a lot of the problems I have with this movie.
Yeah, I think it would have taken away a bit from Ginger, though, because I like the dynamic between Ginger and Bridget just being, at the beginning of it, they're so close, even though you can tell that just they're in high school being the way that they look, each of them the way they look, you can tell that, like, if Ginger was on her own, I think I would have a little harder of a time buying that people, like, weren't interested in her or whatever. I can buy it more when she's, the sister to the other sister and they're just kind of weird together.
Sure.
I think
That's not to say you
with-
couldn't write it another way.
Yeah, fair. I don't know. I like the sister dynamic. I think that it's something that you don't often get to see.
But you have to agree, it does hurt the overall film at the end.
I think that they just didn't know what to do with it at the end, and I think that maybe that
like they don't know what to do with it.
I think that's more of their problem than a
well, my point is like
character problem.
well, my point is because they didn't know what to do with it, they wrote themselves into a corner with two characters, they didn't know what to do, and it just kind of spins its wheels.
Yeah.
Which again, like, it's unfortunate. Like, because like I said, I like the performances in this movie, except for Mimi Rogers' bizarre character turn. Katherine Isabelle, take it or leave it, but I like Emily Perkins a lot. I mean, she's great in the It, TV movie. She's better than Annette O'Toole.
Yes. Well, Annette O'Toole hated that movie, so.
Well, if you hated it, you shouldn't be in it, and also, you're terrible in it. So, why is it so mean? Because your acting is awful. That's why it's mean.
Yeah.
But she's good. I would actually go out on a limb and say Emily Perkins does a better Bev than the actress they have doing her in the new movies. She's a more likable character in those movies, in that TV movie. Like, that's the thing about the Bev character, is she has to be likable. And in this movie, Emily Perkins is likable as well. I mean, she's very likable. You know,
yeah,
you sympathize
she's very relatable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of people in high school aren't the Katherine Isabelle character, who are just like one moment away from like becoming fully realized as who they are. Most of us are the Emily Perkins character, where it's like, I'm constantly in the shadow of the person that's slightly better in every way than I am.
Right. And I like the idea of like playing on the jealousy between the two, and I like all of that. But yeah, I mean, God, the third act of this movie. Yeah,
the last 25, 30 minutes of this movie are
which is like a third of the movie.
I mean, you're just, like you said, spinning your wheels to get to a place that we all know is coming. It's like, she has to kill her. We got it. Can we just get there?
It shouldn't have taken 30 minutes for us to realize, like, yeah, her sister's gonna have to kill her. And I mean, like, go and, like, you know, oh my God, go and look on, like, and I'm not saying that this is some sort of indicator, but sometimes I look at Wikipedia to, like, refresh myself after watching a movie. The first half of the movie is 3 paragraphs. The second half of the movie is 4 paragraphs, but it's, like, so, like, minute details of all these things. It's just, like, holy shit, like, so much takes place in the last 30 minutes of this movie that could have been streamlined, written down, done away with completely. Like, you don't even have to have the mom in there doing, like, the weird, like, killer, like, all of a sudden thing, like, lion den mother thing.
Forget about Mimi Rogers. Like, she becomes so much more of a character in the middle of it, and then
she goes away at the end.
Then after she decides that she's gonna, like, you know, burn the house down or whatever, that's kind of the last you hear of her. And I guess she's just driving around in her minivan somewhere.
That's not kind of. That is the last time you see her in the film.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she just drives away in her minivan. It's like, okay, bye.
Well, because she takes Emily Perkins to the party that Katherine Isabelle's already at, but they leave in Sam's drug van with Katherine Isabelle in the back, and then she becomes the werewolf. So, yeah, you don't see Mimi Rogers again, which also, by the way, I feel like that is a missed opportunity. If you're going to invest any amount of time in the Mimi Rogers character, why wouldn't you give a conclusion to that character's arc?
Right. Like, you could have, like, let her sacrifice herself, or let her...
She could have... You know what she should have... You know how this movie should have ended? It should have ended with her burning the house down with both of them in it.
Yeah, like, full on. There we go, into Carrie style.
Because she threatens to do it anyways.
Yeah, that would have been a good ending. That, like, just burning it down with both of them in it, that would have been a good ending. Again, I still would have liked to see Mimi Rogers as, like, an original werewolf sort of thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the other thing that, like you mentioned, doesn't make a whole lot of sense is it does seem like she knows more than she's leading on.
Yeah, she seems much more comfortable, like, much more like, oh shit, I figured something like this was going to happen.
Which, I mean, that would have been an interesting angle.
Exactly. I don't know why, and I feel like something there, as much as, like, I keep saying that this movie needed to be shorter, I feel like there's still some parts of it that got, like, cut out that would have made it make a little bit more I think that they had ideas for the last half, and they just put in the threads of all those ideas and never fully realized anything.
Can I be honest with you? I don't have a problem with the length of the movie. I have a problem with the content contained within the length of the movie. Does that make sense? Like, a movie can be an hour and 40 minutes, but you can't have 30 minutes be this, like, prolonged chase scene.
Yeah, no, that I totally agree with that.
Like,
it's more of a pacing issue.
Yeah, if they had given it to Mimi Rogers and her doing something interesting, like, give some of the characters something interesting to do in the closing moments of the film. Because if it would have been me, I would have had Mimi Rogers realizing that they're in the basement fighting, and then just have her say, fuck this, and burn the house down with them inside of it. And so when Bridget is sitting in the basement with her sister, after she stabs her with a knife, killing her, hitting her with a knife and killing the giant werewolf monster. Okay.
Right.
Which, is it even described as a silver knife? Is that the silver knife?
I don't remember. I can't remember.
I would have had her burn the house down, and then, the two of them are in the basement, and so the house is burning down around them. And you can still get away with having a sequel to this movie because you just say, well, she escaped. Barely alive, she escaped because she has the werewolf powers now, and it has the increased healing. Like, they wrote themselves
immediately.
Right, they wrote themselves into a corner, and they could have written themselves right back out of it, but they chose not to. And so, like we've been saying, there's a lot of fun to be had with this movie, but once you get to the part where, Ginger goes to school and murders the guidance counselor, like, that's just kind of, for me, like, I'm kind of done there. Which is unfortunate, but it is like a third of the movie as well.
It is, yeah. And I think that, like, this movie, because I feel as though this movie is pretty fondly looked upon in the horror community.
Very much so.
And I wonder, like, how much of that is just, like, how much of the movie people remember and how recently they've sat down and actually watched it. Because I think that like, it can play a large part into it. 'Cause there's definitely movies that I remember, like, oh, yeah, I fucking love that movie. And then I go back and rewatch it, and I'm like, wow, like, 45 minutes of this movie is really boring. I think another movie you actually did for this month, Final Destination, is one of those movies that people look back and they remember really, like, that movie's actually kind of fun. Like, I remember really enjoying that movie. And then you actually go back and rewatch it, and wow, like, that movie drags.
Well, yeah, and that movie's problems are everything that came after this is better than what it is problem.
Yeah, that's fair, too.
But no, I will agree with you 100%. Final Destination definitely feels like a film that has, like, 3 endings. And it's like...
Choose your own adventure. They did that for one of them.
They sure did. But the ending is always the same, regardless of the ending you choose. I would agree 100%. The pacing in this movie is very, like, Final Destination, reminiscent of the problems I had with that film. Where, like, just a lot doesn't happen.
You just front load the beginning of the movie, like the first act and a half of the movie, and then you did just the rest of it is just
nothing.
Little details spattered in a bunch of nothing, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and it is 30 minutes of just like, and then he tries to go and get her, but she grabs him out of the pantry, like, oh my god, this scene goes on for too long, and it's one of, like, 10 scenes that goes on way too long at the end of this movie. Like, it's just like, it's an endurance test at the end to get to the end of the film.
It really is, and I thought for, like, a couple times, I'm like, oh, okay, it's over, and okay.
Yeah, and again, because it doesn't do anything exciting or interesting with the outcome, it feels like a wasted opportunity. Because it is a novel concept. It is a fantastic idea. Like a puberty allegory with werewolves. Like, that's a fucking fantastic idea. It really is. But, it's not particularly executed well in the parts of the movie where it's actually drawing on the horror genre that it is clearly exists within, because it is a film about a girl turning into a werewolf.
Yeah, and, like, losing all control of her body. And wherewithal.
So what would you give the film out of 5, Jess?
I think I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 2.5. As much as I like the beginning, which I do, the first 30, 40 minutes of the film are fun, interesting, exciting, once you hit the later portions of the film, I'm so done. Like, I'm just waiting for the film to be over, and that's really bad. Like, that is not where you want to get when you're watching a film. You don't want to be, like, checking your phone, watch, clock, what have you, and being like, when is this going to be over? Like, that is a really bad way to watch a movie. Is to be like a clock watcher, because I just wanted it to be over at the end. So let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
You remember this one? Boy, they really made that torrid zone sizzle. And this one? Big. Boy, it was colossal. Wait till you see this one. Take it from a guy who sees them all. It's the best yet.
You won't tell me because you think I'll come there. You think I'd follow you.
You'd be insane to follow me.
Was I insane to pick you up on the road? Was I crazy to let you stay here? I thought I had a pretty good life here, but your going away doesn't make it seem good anymore.
No, I've got the Indian sign on me. It seems I can't win.
I've sort of joined your team. Don't look forward to being without you.
When I leave here, you're off my team. Lucky to be.
You're a guy with plenty of trouble.
I'll have a trouble in the world.
Don't tell me, brother. I know. Your trouble is women.
I've cried myself to sleep at night because of you. She's got you now. She wants you very badly, doesn't she? She's willing to run away with you and keep on running and ruin everything for herself. Well, she doesn't have you now, and she'll never have you.
That's right. On the next Culture Cast, we are moving on past Horrortober to Noir-vember. We're going to be talking about noir films. And I am going to be joined by Father Malone to kick off the month with a look at a little film that I have never seen. Shocking. Every time he's on the podcast, it's a film I've never seen. Almost like he has a YouTube channel about that or something. Called Dark Passage. It is a Humphrey Bogart film suggested by yours truly, Jess Byard.
Me.
Whole
month was suggested by me.
I mean, you know more about noir than I do, so
I love noir.
So I have no frame of reference. I know The Maltese Falcon and Chinatown.
Oh man,
and
both great movies. But
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, does that count?
It's technically neo-noir.
What's the other one?
Laura, Sunset Boulevard.
Never seen him.
Oh, man,
I've never seen not Mulholland Drive. L.A. Confidential.
Well, I mean, Mulholland Drive kind of counts as an neo-noir.
I've never seen Mulholland Drive
LA
either.
Confidential is really good.
But we will be addressing the lack of my seeing Mulholland Drive in December.
Yes, that's true.
So we'll be there in December talking David Lynch films once again. Part 2 of David Lynch. We're covering all the movies, and then we never have to watch another David Lynch movie again.
Except I will.
Well, I will too. I'm just saying we won't watch another one on the podcast unless he eventually, finally, hopefully releases something else. Until then, where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard, and you can find me on many episodes of the Culture Cast, as well as a couple episodes of Chronicles from the Crypt, where we talk about the tangentially related Creep Show that's exclusively on Shudder right now. And Chris,
that's where it can stay.
Yeah. And Chris, we are about to finally finish the first season of the one-season show. So you
I thought
all
we were changing the name to the one-seasoning show.
And you guys have plenty of time to catch up on the first 5 episodes, where we are covering 1987's Werewolf, because we can't get enough of werewolves on this show or any other show.
In our friendship, we cannot get enough of werewolves.
Nope. I think on the Creepshow show we talked about werewolves.
Chris and Jess's friendship has been built upon a pyramid of trust, podcasts, and fucking werewolves of all things. So,
yep.
Oh Lord, the 1 season show. We're finally finishing Werewolf. Thank God.
Yes, thank God.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I don't want to watch it anymore.
I think that means you're saying it's bad.
No, it's not. I've been immersed in the world of Eric Cord. Every week he's looking for the darkness of humanity. Alamo Joe Rogan. Yeah. And can people find you on Twitter? Are you on Twitter as well?
Yes, at writer Jess Byard.
Go annoy her on there. She needs more people to annoy her.
You can see pictures of my cat destroying my plant.
It's true. It's true. I've seen them. This is a true fact. And you can follow me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. Unfortunately, October is coming to an end. My favorite month of the year, as I know it is yours as well, Jess. So unbeknownst to everyone else, I will not be changing my name back on Twitter. It will stay. Because that's just what I go by on our Tales from the Crypt podcast. And if you changed your name for October, I would implore you to just leave it. Who gives a shit?
I probably will, unless I can come up with a good November one.
I think yours is one of the best ones that I've seen. It's a good one.
It's my channeling of the Crypt Keeper.
Well, I have seen some people's that are just such a stretch. And I'm just and then there are the people that are the people in the horror community that are too cool to do it. And it's okay, whatever, fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
You want to be Mr. or Mrs. Too Cool? Even Barbara Crampton is getting in on it.
The Barbara Crampton's a bomb.
Do you know what hers is?
What is it?
The Barbara Duke. It is.
Yes, that's great.
I don't like that movie, but that one it's pretty good. It's pretty good. You can follow me on Twitter, follow the podcast on, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on Google Play, we're at culturecast.com. You'll find links over to iTunes where you can rate and review the show, and you'll find links over to Patreon if you want to, give us some of your hard-earned cash. We would definitely not say no. And we would be eternally grateful if you gave me or the podcast money, because the money goes straight into the podcast to keep this little labor of love alive. Big thanks, as always, to _91 for the music for the CultureCast, and to Jess for programming the entire month, which she did, and there were not really any duds. Thank God. I'll tell you this much. Lost Souls was bad. What Lies Beneath was bad. One. I know you did, but we did pick What Lies Beneath,
yes,
and
that's true.
That movie's not great, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, it's a weird, interesting time capsule.
That's a nice way of putting it. Make sure to check out the next episode.